You speak about a lot of concepts that you've researched, and you're not just researching and speaking on them, but you're also creating opportunities for others to get involved in the conversation. You have a retreat in May in Washington, D.C. that you're organizing and giving others an opportunity to have a space to have these same conversations. Can you talk more about that retreat and what it's going to entail?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to bring you there, and we basically use that same concept again, creative juices. We use the same activities and the same concept of neuro-linguistics programming and how we experience the world, a very established discipline of understanding and how we can change our lives. But we apply it to neuro-creative programming and how we select the raw materials of the ideas that we use. But we also combine that again with those 7 ancient principles, because it's important to be able to understand the rules of this reality. Because if you're going to create, you need to be able to understand the rules within the structure that we actually are able to create within. And so that's going to be a weekend that we bring people down to DC. It's a beautiful place. It's actually a restored firehouse, the first African American firehouse in Washington, D.C. that was beautifully restored. And we bring them there, a very cannabis-friendly place, and folks will be using vape, or they can be using concentrates to be able to use marijuana to create. Again, we teach you how to create that effective bridge. So you're directing your consciousness, your thought, and your attentions into the direction of creation. You're learning how to use cannabis as a tool and not just as that recreational aspects. Although that'll be fun as well. We have a chef coming in on the second night, on that Saturday, and that person is going to be creating the meals. The meal itself for that evening, that's going to be cannabis infused with the sativa that's going to bring you up and give you such a euphoric feeling within the group itself, and then bringing you down with an indica that's going to be able to help to calm you down as we move into different periods of thought with regards to, again, the process of creating. And people will be able to get an understanding of how you go out after this event and go and buy your own, go and choose the best types of strains that's going to help you to be able to be the most creative when in fact that's your journey, that's where you really want to be. So looking really forward to that event, and we're going to also be holding a number of smaller events on different weekends, possibly just one-day events, just because we're trying to share this concept of neuro-creative programming and the bigger concept of creative juices, how we get our ideas so that people can start leveraging those and start to kind of live their journey, go in a direction where they're naturally inclined to go.
And for anybody interested in getting more information about the retreat in May in Washington, D.C., and even the other events that you will be hosting in the future, where can they go to find that information? And I'll even take it a step further, who should be going to find that information? Who do you recommend for attending these events in terms of background seekers that should be looking to be a part of this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, I think one thing that we look for are seekers. You have to be a person who can literally put away the cows, put away the sacred cows. Les Brown used to talk about how he developed certain ideas and things, and how he follows certain beliefs. He mentioned the story about the ham, and how his mom would go and cut the back of the ham off before she would put the ham into the oven to cook the ham. And when he saw his wife cooking the ham, he said, "No, you're doing that all wrong. You're supposed to cut the back off before you put it in." And she's like, "Well, why? I'm wasting ham." He said, "No, but that's how you do a ham." And when he finally went over and asked his mom, "Mom, why did you cut the back of the ham off?" She would say, "Because the oven wasn't big enough to accommodate the whole ham, so I had to cut it off." But yet he was following the same thought process that had been put in his mind without really regard as to why it was there. It was just a rule. And we have to be able to recognize the sacred cow exists, and then put it into that pasture where it may not be impacting the way we think and the way we move our ideas forward. But that's the most important thing about that. So we'll be talking about that, removing those sacred cows, and how do you at least disconnect them so they're no longer determining the course or the path of your life.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of this also transcends beyond religion or any specific concepts, to just be more open-minded
Most definitely.
And can you speak more on how all of these different principles apply to anyone and everyone, regardless of what your beliefs may be or any other systemic concepts that we sometimes find ourselves tied to?
I think the best one, again, is talking about the fact that, we've got a universe that we live in, that we exist within, and that there are rules to the operations of this universe. And if we try to move through without understanding those rules, then we are going to run afoul of those rules. And so that's the importance of that. I think if you're interested in learning more, the best way would be to come to thinkdifferentnation.com. If you're interested in learning about the retreats, thinkdifferentnation.com/retreats. You can also set a time to speak with me directly. I dedicate a 2-hour session just to be able to have a conversation with you about your needs, your direction, where you're trying to go, because it's kind of hard to get it in a 30-minute clip, especially when we're talking about our personal, our certainty of purpose and where we're trying to go in life. How do you get that out within 30 minutes? How do you get that out within an elevator pitch? Even the whole concept of having that conversation with you, you've been incredible at least taking me in those directions, but how do you state something? How do you communicate such a concept that is so fundamental to the way we operate when most people can't grasp it? See, there's a layering effect that goes to any experience that you have. If you think about, for example, the first experience you have with something, you'll have that experience and then you walk away and you have really no recollection of the details of it. You get the bigger picture. The more experiences that you have, the more you develop a three-dimensional understanding, even a visual picture of the entire event as it's occurring around you. And then that's when you're able to regurgitate that. That's when you're able to communicate back. Someone asks you what was it about. You're actually able to say what it's about, because experience is layered. The more and more experiences that you have, the more and more those experiences layer. But a lot of people would say, for example, we come into this world, into our existence, into this life with certain archetypes of past experiences. And so if you're a person who's coming in and we're trying to have a conversation about, for example, geometry, and you haven't been through addition or subtraction or multiplication, then it's like speaking Greek. But yet it's the same thing happening within our world, within our existence. If you haven't had the number of lives that are necessary to build up a certain level of understanding of one of those different concepts, then it may go completely over your head, because you may just not necessarily be prepared and ready for that journey yet. You haven't had enough experiences to be able to build that awareness. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's the 5 different, hierarchy of needs, where the first one is you need to be able to have shelter from harm. The last one is self-actualization. And if you speak to most folks who may be living in the Caribbean, it's impossible for most folks to contemplate self-actualization, because you're never getting above level 1, level 2, where you're providing food for your family, where you're providing the security, where you're moving up to the next level, maybe providing the college and things to help you to move forward in life. But you can never get to a point where you can self-actualize, because you've got other things holding you down. You can't even contemplate self-actualization because you've got things. Just like the person who may be the indigenous living in the Amazon can't conceptualize geometry, it's impossible to conceptualize self-actualization if you're grown and you're born into an existence where it doesn't exist. And so the same thing goes with certain principles. If you're not at a level of awareness and understanding to be able to contemplate and consider the different pieces, and therefore the end result of putting those different pieces together, then oftentimes it's because you just haven't had those experiences, possibly in this life, or maybe even in your prior lives, to be able to build the experience, so that now you're coming here and you're able to fully understand as we go forward.
And looking at neuro-linguistics programming, neuro-creative programming, creative juices, the retreat you have in May, you talked about a lot of different exciting things to come, things that you've been researching. How would you summarize all of that? I know it's, as you mentioned, you can't put it into 30 minutes or an elevator pitch, but do your best and how you would summarize that to introduce it to somebody that's new for.
I'd say, the summary would be with Creative Juices. Creative Juices is a program designed to teach people how to think differently. And again, it uses mechanical aspects of how we operate within this experience, and that ties back to neuro-linguistics programming, but it also uses the metaphysical side of how we bring in our information and what our mind does from a conscious standpoint to the subconscious standpoint to bridge ideas and to create things, to create newer things, to create something that has never existed before. That'd probably be the biggest wrap up for what is Creative Juice and what this experiment is that we're involved in.